Future recaps here. Today we're gonna discuss the movie The Last Heist. A group of thieves are planning to rob a bank that is about to close in order to steal $100 million when the movie opens. One of the safes holds the item. The criminal's van is currently parked in front of the bank, waiting. The drivers signal to exit the vehicle and begin the robbery. However, he notices a briefly man in a suit and tie walking down the street holding a large bag and wearing black sunglasses. That person pauses for 5 seconds and gives the driver a suspicious look before continuing to walk and entering the bank. The man, who later reveals himself to be a reverend, says he wants to make a deposit to the clerk in his safe. He tells him that the bank is closing and that all of its customers should leave their safes. If they don't, the federal authorities will take their possessions and get in touch with him later. Mr. Reverend refuses to deal with the federal government and insists on picking up all the items immediately. Mrs. Waxman, the irate client, and the bank manager walk in, who motions for the Reverend to wait, pointing to Cynthia, the woman who had been waiting for hours to take a turn. The Reverend approaches Cynthia and removes his sunglasses. He eventually persuades her to give up her seat to him after gazing at her obstinately. The thieves take their weapons outside and put on their skeleton masks so they won't be recognized. The van, and exited. Prior to binding up the hostages, they break into the bank. Cynthia keeps her phone hidden. The robbers count the hostages and notice that 2 are missing from the room. The Reverend asks the clerk to leave after he has taken him to his safe. He claims that regulations prevent him from doing so because his possessions are very private. Soon after, he hears gunshots upstairs, and the clerk immediately goes to investigate. The Reverend opens the safe, which is empty except for jars containing human eyes, when left alone. It's Bernard who is standing there. He's also known as Window, a notorious serial killer who blinds his victims, because they stand in for the windows of the soul, to give them to God. The thieves' boss Paul recognizes the clerk as the clerk has caught up with them in the interim, since Danny is his brother. As he lowers his, Paul apologies to Danny. Mask. The bank's security cameras were turned off a week ago, he tells the other thieves. Then they remove their masks. One of them, Tracy, goes to the vault to free the final hostage and get the $100 million out of the safe. The hostages are taken to another room by 2 more people, Ali and AJ, who watch over them. AJ finds out that Ali and Tracy want to kill every hostage at the conclusion of the robbery, despite Paul having made it clear he didn't want any victims. Leaving the room together, the 2. Danny then asks Cynthia for her phone and texts 911 to request assistance. Returning to the space, AJ and Ali. Danny, however, conceals the act of putting the phone away. Detective Pascal is tasked with going in the meantime while in town after acquiring a taco from a street vendor. Visit the neighborhood bank to inquire about the situation. Finally opening the safe, Tracy puts all the bills in a bag and tells Paul. When she steps outside the vault, she hears a strange noise. When she comes back, Bernard, the hostage who had been hiding in the air vent, is there. Bernard suggests that since he has gathered all of his possessions, the woman should let him go. Tracy, however, is inquisitive and examines the man's bag. She stands still in the presence of so many human eyes. Bernard seizes the chance to attack her as she is in agony. Tracy attempts to retaliate, but Bernard says she only has 9 minutes to live because he cut her arm's arteries. Rick, the van's driver, who has stayed outside to keep an eye on the road, observes a patrol car and Pascal's police car driving toward the bank. Paul is informed by him. Masks and weapons are concealed. Paul answers the door when the detective and the 2 police officers knock, informing them that they are closing and that there is, while posing as the bank manager, there isn't any theft going on. Paul claims he has a warrant, but the woman won't let him in without one. She snaps a photo of him, sends it to the station, and then makes her way to Rick's van to tell the story. The detective notices the driver hiding the drugs he is using and tells him to leave the van. Tracy takes out the gun and attempts to shoot Bernard in the vault, but he is now completely out of luck, so the shot is missed. Strength. The detective becomes preoccupied after hearing gunfire coming from the bank. Freaked out. Utilizing the circumstance, Rick manages to get away. Paul lets him in by opening the door. In an effort, he reaches for the gun to fend off the police, but the woman shoots him in the chest. As the 2 companions, Paul tells Briggs, who has a bald head, to fire on the cops as he brings Rick inside to get medical attention. That it is time to implement Plan B, to use the upstairs elevator to access a hidden exit. Bernard cuts out Tracy's eyes while she is still bleeding to death, then flees. Briggs meets AJ and Ali as she descends the stairs and informs them of Rick's predicament. And the woman quickly realizes that Danny was the one who dialed 911. Following that, Briggs ascends the stairs, takes his axe from his bag, and begins hammering the front wall to open the elevator. Paul enters the bank vault and discovers Tracy's body on a table. Lacking eyes, he informs the others that the missing hostage is the one who killed her and is currently present, attempting to get away through the vents. To kill Bernard, Ali suggests that they track him down. Paul, however, cautions her that they are running out of time and she needs to grab the cash and flee. Mrs. Waxman persuades Allie to take in the hostage room where she must attend to business. To the bathroom with her. Her partner Washington inquires of Paul downstairs as to what transpired. Both he and his brother. He explains that when they were young, they were close and content. However, their paths diverged when they enlisted in various army units. In the meantime, Mrs. Waxman is supposed to emerge from the restroom, but Allie notices that she hasn't. The killer is sitting on the toilet with the victim dead when the woman opens the door. Through the bathroom vent as well. According to Allie, the man may be inside a restroom. However, she is unable to locate him and chooses to join AJ. However, Bernard grabs her by the as she exits. She is slung over her shoulders, knocked to the ground, and then fatally stabbed in the chest. AJ. Danny overhears him talking to Allie and wondering what she's up to while the air duct is being disturbed. Meanwhile, the bank is surrounded by numerous police vehicles. Paul requests updates from Briggs and AJ. And AJ tells him that Allie was likely killed because she did not come back from the bathroom. 1. The radio frequencies that the thieves used to communicate with one of the police officers. On walkie-talkies and dials the detective to allow her to hear their conversation. The female. AJ learns that the thieves are imprisoned in the after overhearing Paul and AJ talking. In the same building as the serial killer she has been looking for years. Paul is in need. Asks the detective to discuss the situation after exiting the bank unarmed. Peacefully. She nods her head and inquires about the number of hostages and thieves. As a whole. Paul ignores her inquiries and requests that she bring him a school bus as well as a doctor for Rick. 2 hours after. Paul threatens to shoot the hostages if they don't comply. The police officer accepts. Despite the fact that she knows he would kill someone, she does not think he is the kind of person who would do it. Formerly served in the military. The woman says her husband was in the Corps, and Paul claims to have served in the Corps. Also a soldier who perished in a Baghdad explosion. Paul is told by the detective that she finds it puzzling that after surviving a war, men like him do not go on to live better lives. Instead of resorting to criminal activity. Paul then acknowledges the woman's acceptance of his proposal. Upon his return, he will give her and her group the hostages. Detective Pascal commands 2 officers to come in through the window behind the bank and tell her what's going on. Paul goes back to the bank and instructs Washington to prepare the hostages and join AJ on the upper floor. In Washington, convinces Danny to calm Rick down so the doctor can treat him when he arrives. In the meantime, Paul's request is so straightforward that the detective and her boss are debating it. Are concerned that they will be taken advantage of. An enormous black van carrying a DOD team interrupts them. SWAT summons him, he shows up. Sinclair, the team's leader, claims he has been attempting to catch Paul for years. Detective Pascal questions him as the bank closes as to what he is attempting to steal. And he tells her that there is cartel money worth $100 million in the vault. It was one of Sinclair's men. Rick is being treated by Dr. Smith, who enters the bank. He is taken upstairs after Paul recognizes him as a hostage. In exchange, he takes Cynthia and Rick and gives them to the police. AJ joins. Smith motions for him to remain seated if he doesn't want to pass away. A brief while later, Bernard enters the room through the shaft and approaches. Smith begs AJ to fire. He hesitates out of fear, unable to convince him before it's too late. Every one of them, according to Bernard, is a sinner. He understood he needed to gather the most souls after hearing God's voice. And he acts in this manner. By removing the eyes of his own victims, AJ is about to shoot Bernard after loading his weapon. Sinclair's sniper Chen is currently aiming while standing over the structure in front of the bank. AJ stares at Bernard, believing he is just another hostage. AJ will pull the trigger as soon as possible. Smith and Bernard are left alone in the room after a bullet is fired through his head. Frank Sinclair. Together with the detective, he and his partner Jones stormed into the bank. Each person begins to fire. And one of the soldiers murders Washington. Sinclair queries Paul after the shooting ceases. He made off with all the cash. Paul and the detective are both confused by what is happening. Heard that Sinclair is a member of the cartel as well. Briggs, who has started the elevator, is in the background. Heads in Paul's direction after hearing the gunshots. However, he comes across Smith's in the room after that. Body with no eyes. The latter makes an attempt to warn Briggs to flee but falls short. The ability to communicate effectively. Briggs is struck by Bernard's axe as he approaches from behind. The detective places Sinclair under arrest in the main room, but he orders her not to interfere. From the 2 police officers that the detective had dispatched also make their way upstairs, but Jones kills them right away. Paul takes advantage of his diversion to hit and kill him. As a weapon approaches, the manager notices it. Tries to grab it to save himself, but Sinclair instantly kills him. The investigator tries to persuade the soldier to shoot him if he doesn't put down the gun. To distribute the funds. She declines, and Chen surprises her from behind and shoots her. Only Danny and Paul are still alive, and they are aware that they cannot defeat Chen and Sinclair. Paul offers to give up, but Sinclair kills him after apologizing. They're about to murder Danny too, but the detective shoots Sinclair and Chen with her last remaining strength. But he makes it through. And flees upstairs, running into Briggs and Smith, who are both dead and eyeless. Danny extricates himself. With scissors, takes the detective's gun, and pursues Sinclair with the intention of killing him. That last one uses the elevator to make his way into the vault. He encounters the murderer as he searches for the exit, who stabs him, beats him, and knocks him to the ground. Sinclair attempts to shoot him, but fails. He is left alone with a knife impaled in his shoulder after Bernard narrowly escapes. Danny likewise reaches the vault and is startled when Bernard tackles him to the ground. However, he grabs the knife and executes the murderer once and for all by stabbing him in the throat. Sinclair has located the exit and has plans to safely flee, but Danny stops him from behind and fires before Sinclair has time to react. The forehead of him. Danny is now content because he has stopped and exacted revenge for his brother's death, preventing a serial killer from carrying out additional murders. However, he is unaware of the window killer's survival and surprises him by stabbing his shoulder from behind. Bernard knocks him to the floor, kills him, then takes out his eyes and puts them in one of his jars. The window killer, safe and sound, has added more souls to his collection and returns to his house with $100 million.